is Carrie Ann Palmer, and I am a resident here. And I want to announce to Mr. Clark that we no longer use those white birth certificates. They have forced us to get the pretty blue ones. So I need to send some to you so you can see what they look like. Some of the do's and don'ts of visa application processing. Number one, you do not want to lie on your application. I don't know if any of you saw the news recently of the lady that she spoke of doing a particular job, making X earnings, and they found out she was charged for fraud. The implication of that is it will never leave your application. It will never leave your file. So as Mr. Clark mentioned earlier about the immigrant processings, so should in case she gets married and her spouse is seemingly from the US and wants to file for her, that alone, that is going to be a big lump sum of her trying to get that sorted out. Another fraud, one of the big fraud things that is going on right now is persons paying for visas. There is absolutely no link at the embassy. Let me debunk that. There is no link at the embassy. I have been receiving these calls from last week. Persons paying $250,000, $300,000. The fact that you go to the embassy and you get that white paper in hand, it means that you are already qualified for the visa. When you go and you go back and you pay the additional $270,000, should the embassy find out, which they normally do. Case in point, you go to the embassy on the 6th of May, and on the 21st of May, you receive an email that your visa has been revoked. That is fraud. You don't want that on your file. And I know many persons are going through that right now as we speak. As I said earlier, I've been receiving a lot of those phone calls. What do I do from here? That is what, if you know anybody, you can let them know that you know a Sekou Clark. He can take up the matter. Because there are waivers that has to be done in order for you to go forward. A lot of persons are also of the impression that if you get caught in that real life scenario. So the customer said to me, if I should just turn up at the airport with my plane ticket, what will happen? And I said to her, if you are emotionally and mentally strong enough, you can go. Because the Jamaican immigration will allow you to leave Jamaica soil. But best believe when you land on Uncle Sam's soil, it's going to be a different ball game. You're not going to be treated nice because you're already flagged in the system. You do not receive an email to say this happened or that happened. Most of the times it's persons that oftentimes go and check the system that they will see certain things. So if your salary, in completing the application form, if your salary is really $30,000, let it stay at $30,000. Paying $300,000 to get a visa now, that is 10 times you can try back for the visa. Which, can they really turn you down so many times? Yes, they can. I had a customer that when she came to me, it was her 14th time. And I said to her, the next time you come back to me, you'll be purchasing your plane ticket. And that's exactly what happened. She was successful. So we try to prepare persons as much as possible. Possible question guidelines, the consistent access of sending a message or making a phone call. The process is not just done when you hand over your money and you get your documents. We stay with you right up until you go to the embassy, even after you leave the embassy, because once you're granted the visa, you'll get, you're supposed to get a tracking number to collect your passport. And that is another thing. Even though you get the white paper, it don't mean anything on the morning When you go back for the passport, that's when you know that you really get the visa, because you can go back for your passport and be presented with a green slip. And a lot of persons don't know that. So it's not something that we encourage you to tell he, she, and the old lady, hey, I go embassy today. You don't need to do that. You don't need to share that. That is very, very personal details. So try to keep your application information as true as possible. As I say, if it's $30,000 your salary, then that is what you put on the form. It is better for them to tell you that we don't think you're earning enough than you put a salary that they know, because best believe, they know Jamaica's ecosystem. They know it. There's another scenario I know of. A young lady, she went to another travel agency, and the young lady told her, as a supervisor at a gas station, to put $250,000 for her salary. And the man questioned her 3 times about the salary. And the 3rd time, she still said, yes, that's my salary. So he gave her the opportunity to come clean, and she did not. She went ahead with the sad story. No, I don't know what was put in the system, but that stays. That is not going to leave. So even if she should leave that job to go on to something else, that one lie will forever work against her. Hence, the denials and the impact that some denials have. Additionally, one of the other perks is the person that you're using as the US contact. If that person ran off in the US, a big no. A big NO. They will judge you according to whom you're going to. So, all right, so Shakira auntie run off and Shakira go and look for her auntie. You're just not going to get the visa. Because they're going to say, okay, your auntie did the same thing. What have you done, or what can you do, or what have you placed in your application to say you're not going to do the same thing that your aunt did? So that's a big no. The social media thing is also an issue, and a lot of people cringe whenever I ask if they do social media. These people check everything. We have to remember they are anti-fraud, anti-everything that is negative, anything that can affect them or have any negative impact or connotations on them. A lot of persons, their social media pages, sometimes I take the time out to browse, and I say no. I say no. Because it is not looking good at all. It's not impressive. It is not impressive. So those are some of the perks. The question and answer, how you portray yourself on the morning of the interview, those are other factors. And something that we try to implore persons is, please remember what you put on the form. I understand, and this is something that I tell all my customers. The anxiety at the US Embassy is very real. It is so real and so tangible as me touching this folder. You can actually feel the anxiety, the tension, everybody's emotion. I had to go there in March, and I remember being there and being observant. One of the things that I noticed, everybody gets antsy, they're nervous. I mean, if what you put on the application form is true, you don't need to be nervous about it. And one young man that stood out to me, the consul officer asked him a question, and he said, so, Mr. Clark, what is your salary? And he said, $150,000. And the consul officer said, but you have $70,000 here. So I understand. We do, as I said, we provide guidelines. You have hands-on to us right up until your interview. We don't just leave you hanging. So I'll hand over now to Mr. Clark.
You went to the US and had the child in the US? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so you had the child in the US. you came back and then the visa was revoked?
I came back.
Okay.
I lived with my child. I'm returning with the child to the States just for vacation. Not revoked, just turned back home.
Okay. All right.
How do you now, years later,
Okay.
return with your child because you want to work and live in the U.S.?
Okay. All right. And how old is the child now?
20.
20. Okay. All right. So this is a really, really good example of things that I can explain because it's very, very common with a lot of immigrants, right? So the first part of it is if you as a woman and you are entering the U.S. and you know that you are pregnant and they ask you if you are pregnant and you say no, boom, that's already a misrepresentation. So the next time that you try to enter, you will get denied and you will have your visa rescinded, right? So again, if you know that you are pregnant and the officer asks you if you are pregnant and you say no, then again, 90% of the time that visa will be revoked. The second thing is if you say, yes, I am pregnant, and they say, are you planning to have the child here? Go ahead and say no, because, I mean, you can be premature, you can be shopping. Go ahead and say yes, because if for some reason you end up having that child, you always have the argument to say, hey, I had no control over it, it was not planned, right? The next thing as it regards to pregnancies in the U.S. as an immigrant is if you have the baby in the hospital in the U.S., right, and you use government funds for your delivery, such as Medicaid, and you use it for your expenses, that's already a red flag. Your visa will get canceled. If you incur a medical bill and you leave and don't pay it, your visa will get canceled. 90% of the time, this happens. So say none of that happened to you, you had the baby, and you came back, right? Chances are, if one of those things apply to you, the next time you're trying to enter the country, your visa will be revoked and you will be refused entry for one of those reasons. Either you use the public funds or you made a misrepresentation about knowing that you're pregnant or not. So now, and I've seen this so many times, so now you're back in your home country. You now have a U.S. citizen child that can travel freely, but the child cannot travel by themselves. How do you re-enter the country, right? Well, a lot of time has passed. You can reapply, right? And you can file a HARANCA waiver. Your U.S. citizen child that will be turning 21 can now petition for you, but there's a huge chance, not 100% chance, but there's a huge chance that a waiver is going to be needed because they're going to still find that you are inadmissible because of a misrepresentation that was made. So in my opinion, in assessing the limited facts of what you presented, that is how we would approach it. We would do the HARANCA waiver in saying that you are trying to return to the U.S. because your son is going to live there, you want to be there to support him, etc., etc. You haven't had any criminal convictions, etc. So that is how we'd approach that. And it's a very, very, very common case. All right?
Greetings. Would the HARANCA waiver be used, let's say, if you're filed for and it got denied, and then you're trying to apply now for a regular visa, would you need the HARANCA waiver for that?
Yeah, so we'd have to examine what is the reason that you were denied. But yes, so the HARANCA waiver is only for temporary visas, such as visitors visas, student visas, any type of temporary visa in nature. So yes, it's definitely one that we could consider as a waiver for you to re-enter the country. All right, so in terms of immigration, one thing that I like to demystify with a lot of, especially Jamaicans, is that people think that there's only one way that you can get legal permanent residence in the U.S. is if you get married to somebody or if you have a family member such as a mother or a father. But there are so many other ways in which you can enter the country, right? There is asylum. It may be attracting a little bit of stigma to it right now, but asylum is for people who have legitimate fears of residing in Jamaica, right? We have people who have faced persecution for their religious beliefs, believe it or not. We have people who have been persecuted in the country for their political beliefs, and they fear, because of the community that they're from, they fear reporting it to the police, depending on the allegiance that the police has. So these are strong factors that if you believe that you are helpless, you can enter the U.S. And it's not one of those applications that I advocate to say, hey, leave Jamaica, go to the border and try to enter the U.S. No, but I mean, we've gotten asylum approved for people who have significant fears. I remember as a younger attorney, the first asylum case that I ever got approved as a young attorney was for a homosexual that was living in Jamaica who had multiple stab wounds, and he had one ear burned off, and it was a very interesting case as a Jamaican male for me to handle. But at the end of the day, person is a human being, and I took an oath. He had a legitimate fear of returning because he had significant attacks while being in Jamaica, and his case was approved. So different applications that are applicable to a lot of Jamaicans. As you know, we do sports and entertainment visas. A lot of people, I mean, I was so surprised I got one gold medalist. His visa, I won't say his name. He was a gold medalist in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and I got his green card recently, and he didn't even know that there was a process to where, because of his gold medal, because he has extraordinary ability, that he was actually eligible to get a green card that way, right? But it's not limited to just athletes. If you are somebody, say you are a professor, I know you have a lot of Jamaicans who are professional students, right? They have 5-6 degrees, 18 CXCs, and I'm like, yo, where did you find, I struggled to do 8 and you have 18? So you have a lot of Jamaicans like that. There are visas available for people who are professional students, and they are lecturers, and they have excelled in their fields as professors and scholars. There are visas available for this type of people. There's now the employment visas, and I always get this question, and I'll have Leslie talk about the employment visas. Is one of the most common questions that I get is, how can I enter the US and get a work permit? And I always say, in order for you to get a work permit has to be attached to some type of petition. You can't just go to the US on your B2 visa and say, hey, let me apply for a work permit. No, it is impossible. It has to be attached to some type of petition. So if you are seeking an employment visa, which has a work permit, you have to have a petition from an employer. You have to have either some type of employer, somebody that owns a business who likes your resume, likes your experience, and want you to come and work for them. And then that business or that person that owns businesses will petition for you. Outside of that, work visas, it has to be attached either through an asylum, it has to be attached through a sports visa, it has to be attached to the petition from your spouse or from your parent. It has to be attached to something like that. All right, so I'll have Mr. Estrada come and talk a little bit more about work visas and some of the different type of visas that are available to you.
Everybody, it's a pleasure to be here today in Jamaica again with Sekou Clark Law Group. So when it comes to work visas, it's a little complex because there's different categories that depending, like Mr. Clark was discussing, it all depends on the sponsorship, okay? So we have people, for example, entering the country with a B2 visa. It's a visitor's visa. Like the lady was saying, sometimes you give an entry of 6 months as a visitor, but then 45 days in advance of those 6 months, you can definitely exchange your status from a non-immigrant status as a visitor, and then if you have that sponsor that wants to petition for you, you can actually go into a work visa. There's different categories. I know that the category in mainly right now, H visas, which I'm gonna let Attorney Clark to discuss a little bit about that, because there's a lot of fraud going on with the H-2Bs. I'm pretty sure that you guys have heard before H-1Bs, H-1As, H-2Bs. Those are categories that there's big companies in the US that sometimes they are authorized through the Department of Labor to be able to sponsor different people to change their status or even come straight from Jamaica in this case to work. It could be as a cooker, could be in the cleaning services, it could be in different areas. So you have different, even in hospitality, you see a lot of, in these positions, different occupations like that people would like to change their status into that. Now, one of the things that I do want to emphasize is the status where you're inside the United States. With wanting to get a work permit, everyone wants to get a work permit, right? Especially if you want to be in the US, of course, you gotta eat, you wanna work, you wanna help your family. You gotta do it right. So one of the most common things that we've been having lately in consultations is that people often say, no, is that I have a promise of an employer wanting to petition for me as sponsoring. When they get there, the employer, they don't decide to extend the visa anymore. So the person runs out of status. That's very important to know because sometimes you have people that are, they only like to play with your money, with your pockets, and they're getting money from people, getting you to the United States, right? And once you are in the United States, they get you to work for a temporary time. And then out of that, you're running out of time, running out of the extensive time of your visa. And if they don't extend as a sponsor, you're out and you're supposed to come back to your home country. So those are the things that we need to keep in mind. I mean, with immigration visas also with family members, like we know, very common petition from family spouse, like Mr. Clark was saying. And also with work visas also, like more into the investor side, like if you have a job here, or if you have if you actually have a company here, you can also create other jobs in the United States and be able to, which is, I think you have a question about that, which we're gonna get to you in a little bit. But that's it, that's for H-2B visas. Thank you.
The attorney back here, yeah. What's your name, counsel?
Good afternoon. My name is Kavod Simpson. So the question I have is, I am reverting to I believe it was the IRANCA waiver, the Bujo waiver process.
Hold on, say that over again, I'm sorry.
The IRANCA waiver procce?
Yes, you're going through it?
Yes, I just wanted to know what is the time period after the deportation or denial of which you can basically reapply?
Okay, so that's a good question. So it's guided by two things. If you are filing it after the time that you have been barred, so if they said there's a 5-year bar, then you can file after the 5-year bar. If you're filing it after the 10-year bar, then you file after the 10-year bar. If you're filing it before that, right, you'd have to see if you're eligible for something called a 212 waiver, which allows for you to file before the statutory period for which you are barred. So that's something that we'd have to see if you are eligible for. So you'd have to file the 212 and you'd have to file the IRANCA waiver. All right?
My name is Stefan Miller. A client of Sekou at Sekou Clark Law Group. I would have engaged Sekou to assist me on the E2 visa journey. I must say his team, very professional, very helpful, very knowledgeable, and over a period of over 8 months, and we were successful. So, thanks Sekou and the team. I would highly recommend it.